Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It is time to begin our first panel on regional experiences, which will be led by 6 nominated emerging leaders from the TIJ and IGLP workshop on the rule of law and policy. The week-long intensive workshop co-organized by the Thailand Institute of Justice and the Institute for Global Law and Policy at Harvard Law School. This panel will be joined by Catalina Gil from Open Society Foundations, Harleen Ko from VIN Partnership, Jelly Molino from Tao Lake Aquaculture Alliance Inc., Atit Surya Wonggun from Y-Site, Taw Pat Yomnak from Faculty of Economics, Chulalongkorn University, and Piset Warankabut from Thammasat University School of Global Studies, who will be the moderator for this panel discussion. These emerging leaders will present on the rule of law-based solutions to complex socio-economic issues in various contexts, as well as provide an opportunity to take stock of lessons learned. Please welcome the TIJ emerging leaders onto the stage.
So, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being here with us. So, the 6 of us have just gone through a 6 days of a rigorous training, discussions, and knowledge sharpening. So today, it's quite exciting for all of us to actually present some of what we've learned and friendship that we've made to everyone here today. So, so to not waste time, I think we should just start with Catalina.
Okay. So, good morning to everybody. I am Catalina Gil. I am from Colombia, and I'm a consultant for the Open Society Foundation, specifically the Global Drug Policy Program. And before I start, I want to say that I'm really happy and grateful to be here today. So before I get to the problem, to the policy problem, sorry, I forgot my policy experience, is about petty drug selling and use at risk in urban context. And I'm going to focus in the Colombian experience. So before I arrive to the problem, I want to give you like a short background so that we better understand the problem. And so the first thing is that when we talk about drugs and Colombia, for sure, like the most known problem is that we are the world's largest producer of cocaine and that we export it. However, I have been, like in our country, we have been listening to a lot of public statements from the president, the attorney general, and the mayors of the biggest cities that now we have an additional problem, and is the internal markets, meaning all the drugs that are being selling inside of the cities. And they have said that this is like the biggest threat that some cities has today. So within all this process of the supply chain, at the end, we have something that is called the petty drug selling. That in other terms is like the sale of the psychoactive substances. By psychoactive substances, I mean cocaine, crack, LSD, ecstasies, all of these substances. So it's the selling of the substances in small quantities at the local level. So these have some characteristics. One of them is that usually the ones that are recruited to sell these drugs are young people, especially vulnerable young people. Second is a transaction that usually needs a physical location, such a park, a corner, a square. And also because of this characteristic is an activity that is subject to social censorship, because it's visible to the public. Of course, like sometimes, I don't know how it works here, but in Colombia we know that in this square they sell drugs, outside this school. So of course it's something that for the public, for the citizens, is worrying, and we see it. And like, for example, when they transport the drugs, usually they use trucks to go for one city to another city, but we don't see that. So that's quite one of the difference. Also, I want to kind of give you like a really big, really like short characteristic of who are these young people that are involved in this market. So first, they live in social, political, and economical exclusion. Like the majority of the neighborhoods where they live have weak access to public services. Also, there's a lot of racism and stigmatization from the government and the society. And one example that I will give you is one of the cities, that is Cali, that I don't know if you remember, like one of the biggest cities in Colombia with the cartels are Cali and Medellin. Cali, one of the big neighborhoods where you can find a lot of these markets, is kind of excluded from the rest of the city, also has the majority of the Afro-Colombian population. And usually what they have told me is that when we want to apply for a job, when they know that we are from this neighborhood, they reject us. Because they know this neighborhood is like a poor neighborhood, we are Afro-Colombians, and here is where all the violence kind of is going on. Also, when I talk once to some private sector that works in the area, they say like they also have some constraints because it's the private sector that try to promote employment in this type of context. And they say like, for example, some other private companies, they say like, no, we don't want to hire Afro-Colombians. So it's kind of also hard for them. There's youth unemployment, for sure, and there are few spaces for youth participation. When you talk to them, they don't even feel part of the society. They think that they are really left behind. They don't trust institutions. They don't trust the government. Also, this neighborhood has presence of illegal armed groups that control illegal economies. And I think this is important because it's not only the presence of drug markets, there are a lot of other illegal economies that like sexual exploitation and the rest. Also, these young people have been victims of armed conflict. For you to know, like we have been with a long armed conflict. And so they have been victims of eternal displacement. They have been how their peers have been killed, how their relatives. And this also, like if you are 18, 20 years old, can create also a trauma during all your life, no? And also the role models and expectations that they have are related to violence, to gangs, to money. That basically is what they have been seeing and with what they live on. So about like, I'm gonna give you some like the principal part that I think are the policy problem. First, youth is the main workforce of the criminal organizations that control these drug markets and the most targeted by the police. However, this doesn't affect the supply chain. So in the way that, since this is the most visible like transaction, the police usually focus on arresting these young people, but it doesn't affect at all the drug business. And also usually the type of roles like to be the messenger to be the seller of the drug, these young people are easily to replace in their jobs. So also that's why like to target them is not like we're wasting a lot of resources and time, and there's not where we have to invest. We have to invest in youth, but not invest in arresting them in a way, no? When you talk to them, they don't even know to whom they work for, in a way. Second, there's not enough understanding of the phenomenon or clear path on how to approach it. So, for example, usually we talk about micro-trafficking and selling, but sometimes we put in the same bag like the head of the organization and the young people. So we need to know what we are talking about. Second, the current measures and public statements taken by the Colombian government are more from a criminal and punitive approach, you know, and they equal youth as a criminal. So, for example, the president, since he was a candidate, he said that I'm going to chase all the dealers that are on the streets, you know, but we have to ask, like, who are those dealers? Are really criminals or who they are, no? Or a lot of the majority of the programs are led by the police. So why this institution have to lead all this type of like prevention or reintegration programs? Also, this is linked that the policy, these type of issues in drug policy are usually framed as an exclusive topic of the security agenda. So the social and economic factors are very overlooked. And the last one is the way we measure drug policy in general. We usually measure the successful of drug policy in the coca crops that we eradicate, in the seizures, in the captures, but there's no indicator about the social and the economic issues. This is like the link with the sustainable development goals is no poverty, like 1, 3, 5, 8, 10, 16, and 17, no poverty, health, gender, decent work, reduce inequality, peace, justice, and partnerships for goals. So kind of the proposal right now is more like an exploration phase, and is we need to produce more evidence. We need to know to understand what we are talking about, you know. Second is involve young people in the analysis of, and the solution. Usually we need to talk to them. We need to know, for example, what can be a good solution. What employment will be, what type of employment will they like? Is easy and safe to get out of these markets, or they will be killed? Like, I think we need to talk to them instead of putting them on jail. Also, identify good practices at the local level. I think we need to start at the local level and trying to see what's been going on the field and identify the success factor, and if we can, it can be replicable in a way. Also, organize or promote multi-stakeholders discussions, but also at the local level. You know, maybe create a space where we can talk to the priest, to the nuns that they are usually in this type of neighborhoods, to the people that also live in the neighborhoods, to the private sector, to the young people, and start discussing to them about the issue. You know, like, what is the issue? What possible solutions can we also design and implement effective ways to change narrative about drug issues. Like, usually, I know and I understand that when people have sons of children, they are really afraid that your children can pass through that park when you are selling drugs. And usually, I think worldwide, when we see a young man or woman with some characteristic, we think they're going to kill us or they're going to rob us. So I think like we need to start to make people like kind of understand or feel more empathy about how's the world of these young people in a way. Where do they come from? How are their neighborhoods? And at the end, I think like what we need to do is to link the drug agenda with peace building and development, you know, because we have been focusing all our efforts in security. And to close, I want to leave with this kind of image. And there's a quote that the former president of Colombia, that is Juan Manuel Santos, he said once about drug policy. He said, "We are on a stationary bicycle, spinning our wheels instead of moving forward." So more or less is the word, I don't know if you have here, like in drug policy, usually we keep making the same mistakes one and over the time. So I think that by including development, human rights, and peace-building lenses, we can start to move this bicycle forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Catalina. It seems like youth culture and aspiration play a very important part in how youth be involved in drugs, right? I'm sure that a lot of us in the audience have many questions. But we will save that for later after the 5 of us have presented. So everyone has about 10 to 12 minutes. And after that, we'll have the Q&A session. So can I invite Halim to present? Thank you.
Hi, morning. I am just waiting for my slides to come up. It is not cooperating. Ah, there we go. No, that's not mine. My talk today, my policy today is actually on the victim support program. Okay, so until they deal with that, let me just talk to you. The question to be posed today is, where is the voice of the victim in a criminal justice system in KL? Because that's where I'm from. And the short answer to this is it's actually nowhere. Right now, our system is very accused-centric. So what that means is our criminal justice system focuses on the accused. Now, this is something that is very important because it is important to ensure that the accused knows exactly what charge he or she is facing. It is important that if someone is arrested, he or she is brought before a magistrate within 24 hours of that arrest. It is equally important that anyone that is facing a criminal charge is given legal representation, regardless of whether he or she can afford to pay for said legal representation. Equally important are all the appeal tiers. You've got several tiers of appeal. All these processes which are in place are safeguards for the accused, and they are very, very important, and we should ensure that they stay there. But that is also the current status quo. Our focus is only on the accused and not on the victims. Now, this lopsided focus results in problems, and the problems are many. Number one, you have a victim of a crime that has got no support system. Our criminal justice system makes no provisions, no formal provisions for the victim. What support are we going to give them? Who do they liaise with? Where do they go to after this? Who explains to them what happens after the person is arrested? Who explains to the victim what is court procedure from A to Z? As you know, court procedure would involve a remand proceeding, then you would have a bail proceeding, then you would have the remand proceeding, the charge proceeding, the bail proceeding, actual trial dates. This is something that unfortunately the local layperson is not entirely aware of. The next thing that the victims are unaware of are simply court timelines. You see, all of us, we just watch movies, right? Mostly American movies, where you just see the person being brought to court within 24 hours, decision delivered, all done, victim gets justice, everyone's happy. But unfortunately, that's not how it works in real life. In real life, the victim has to come to court again and again and again. And every time the victim needs to come to court, it involves a conversation with the employer. I need to apply for leave. I need to go to court. Why do you need to go to court so often? And you have to explain this repeatedly. My third point is that the concept of bail is also quite foreign to the layperson. The fact that you are now a victim, you have had an atrocious experience, you picked up the courage to go and lodge a police report. The police did the investigation. The police arrested the accused person. The accused person was then brought to court, and you thought, yes, today I'm going to get justice. The key word is today. I'm going to get justice. But that doesn't happen. Instead, what you see, because you are not represented legally in court, so you are sitting behind in the courtroom, and what you see up front is you've got the deputy public prosecutor on one side, you've got the accused on the other, you've got the accused counsel with him, you've got the judge. They're all murmuring together. You can't really hear them because you're sitting right at the back. And suddenly you see the accused just let go. What happened? This is called a bail proceeding, because everyone must remember that just because someone is arrested or just because someone is charged, it does not mean that he or she is guilty. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. So bail is something that is given as of right. What does this mean for the victim? Because you must understand the victim's perspective. The victim's perspective is, I had something happen to me. Why are you not protecting me? Why is the focus always on the accused? Because the accused is now released. The accused knows where I stay. The accused has access to me. What if the accused is a neighbor? What if the accused is a family member that is staying in my house or that has got access to me at home? And then something, the last point I would like to make is just court dates. This is something very administrative, but you would be surprised how most victims are not told of the court dates. Simply not told, because it's an administrative oversight, it's a bureaucratic oversight. So what happens when the victim does not turn up in court on that court date? Everyone just more or less shrugs their shoulders and say, well, I guess the victim's not interested, so we can't really go forward. So let's DNA. DNA means discharge, it's just to discharge the accused then. So that means case closed. Now, what I would like everyone to consider, and why is it I'm proposing that we have this victim support program, is to take into account all these problems, as well as the fact that victims can be very intimidated by the formal atmosphere of a courtroom. For those of you that have never been inside a courtroom, it's very hush-hush, there's a lot of protocol, you don't really know where to sit, you don't really know if you can speak, and if you can speak, when do you speak, who do you speak to, what do you say. Your interaction with the deputy public prosecutor is also very limited. The reason for this is because deputy public prosecutors deal with a lot of cases, and there's a lot of backlog where these cases are concerned. So that means it is not unlikely that the first time you see and meet and talk to the deputy public prosecutor is the first day that your matter is called up for trial. So this person is a stranger to you, and this person has got another 10 or 12 files in that same courtroom. So that means the DPP cannot really spend time to talk to you. It's just going to be a very quick 1 or 2, 3, 4 minutes, but not more than that. Next is the victim's interaction with the police. Most of the time, this is unfortunately not a positive interaction, simply because some police officers can be aggressive, some can be gruff, so they are not really people that you can go to and ask questions or get comfort from. The accused and the family, like I said, they have access to you, which means, it literally means, if I can just translate this to reality, is they can walk up to you. They can come and sit next to you in the courtroom. There's nothing stopping them from doing this. And they can talk to you. The accused counsel can also do the same thing, because you are not represented. So if they need to speak to you, they will just go up to you and do it that way. So the third element, or the third aspect or the third component to this whole thing is the fact that the victim may be suffering from trauma and actually requires assistance. So aside from all the things that the victim has to deal with, mentally and psychologically, we are actually not giving them any assistance. We don't refer them to any counseling. We don't give them the option that, listen, if you do not wish to face the accused in court, when you testify, you can testify in camera. What that means is that we simply vacate the courtroom, and you don't have to face the accused directly. It can be via video. Who sends the accused for medical examination? There's definitely nothing in place to actually ensure that this is done. What this means is that it's just left up to the accused. It's just left up to the victim. So the victim suffers trauma. The victim then needs to decide on his or her own initiative, okay, in order to preserve whatever evidence that may be on me, I need to go to the hospital. But you see, that's not a decision that should be left to the victim alone to make. Someone surrounding the victim should basically be saying, we need to take you to hospital, you need to get examined by a doctor, then you need to talk to a psychologist or to a counselor. What happens right now on the ground, and this is why I feel that we actually need this program, is the fact that, like I said, the victims are alone, right? Because they've got no one with them. So they get approached by the accused or the accused family or the accused counsel, and they're basically urged to settle the matter by simply receiving or accepting monetary compensation. The wording that's used is, listen, what's happened has happened. We cannot change the past. So what do you get by sending the accused to prison? Nothing. Instead, let us try and make things right for you. We will give you a sum of money. With this money, you can actually move on with your life. If that doesn't work, then perhaps intimidation or threats. You know, the accused knows a lot of people. You know, the accused is connected to people. The criminal court, unfortunately, cannot order for compensation, cannot order the accused to pay compensation to the victim. As I said, the DPPs have got a backlog of cases. They are insufficiently prepared. So the victims are told, you know, your case is not really going to get attention because, well, really, who are you? You're just a faceless name. You're not someone high profile. The accused is not someone high profile. And then in South Asian countries, including Malaysia, there is this thing about bringing dishonor to your family, your loss of reputation, just to think about that. Think about your family instead of thinking about yourself. Now, we want the victim support program so that the victims get access to justice and to fair treatment. They get restitution, they get compensation, and most importantly, they get assistance. And there we go. We rely on technology too much. Okay. So what I propose to do is simply this. I want to set up a victim support program. Very quickly, how do I intend to do this? In Malaysia, we believe very strongly that lawyers must actually contribute to society. And one of the ways of doing this is, before you can actually practice in law, you must give 14 days stretched out over 14 weeks of your time to legal aid. So we have now set up a victim support program. There's a legal aid center in every state in Malaysia. We have about 14 pupils per batch. We call them pupils, even though they've already graduated and are about to be called to the bar. And this batch goes to a court in each state, and they liaise with the victims, and that is what they do. They explain to the victims what to expect. They help the victims to fill up the necessary forms. They explain about court procedure. If they feel the victims need assistance, that means, for example, if the victims need shelter, they refer them to the necessary NGO. If the victim needs counseling, they refer them to the counseling agencies. Whatever help the victim needs, that is what the pupils do. Thank you so much for giving me your attention. If you have any questions, I would be more than happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Halim, for that. Thank you for bringing the courtroom to the audience. We can see why is it important to support the victims. Thank you. So I'll move the floor on to Jelly.
Hi, good morning. I am Jelly. I am from the Philippines. I am the legal counsel for Taal Lake Aquaculture Alliance. So basically, I agree with my colleague that lawyers have a very important role in ensuring that sustainable goals will be achieved. So basically, what I am to share with you is lessons that we can learn from sustainable aquaculture that is actually a result of a judicial proceeding. So, but before that, let me bring you to my community. So for those who are not in Asia, where is the Philippines? So that is where the Philippines is. It's a very archipelago, which is about 3 hours flight from Bangkok to Manila. And in that particular area, the southern part of the biggest island is where Batangas is. That is where I came from. And there you can find Taal Lake. Actually, Taal Lake is more popular for Taal volcano. So Taal volcano is known as one of the smallest active volcano in the world. So it is actually a tourist destination in my country. And of course, Taal Lake, being a very beautiful place, is already a protected area, which is covered by our National Integrated Protected Area Act, which was passed in 1992. So basically, as a protected area for all those who are working on environmental law, economic activities here are limited because the very nature of protection is to preserve the culture, the natural resources, and everything. Yet at any rate, one thing that is peculiar in Taal Lake, it is also an economic driver in our country. So basically, if you will look at an FAO report, we are actually ranking, I think, 9th among the countries that are producing aquaculture or farm products in the world, which in fact, 1.2 of the world GDP on farm production is the contribution of my country. And from that 1.2 contribution, our province is actually ranking 5th in the Philippines in terms of aquaculture products. So basically, we have a protected area that is also an economic driver. And of course, we all know that one of the policy issues is really balancing the need for economic development and the protection of the environment. So, what happened in this case is that in 2011, there was a massive fish kill in the lake. So that triggered actually the issue that the quality of the water in the lake is deteriorating. In fact, a member of the Congress or a parliament, if I may say in the case of Thailand, filed a case before the Supreme Court of the Philippines requesting, among others, for the issuance of moratorium order with respect to aquaculture. It's like asking the court to remove the fish cages in the lake. So I was a young environmental lawyer, was asked by the community to represent them. Because basically it's like, okay, if we remove the fish cages, what are we going to do? Where are we going to get the source of livelihood that we are getting? So basically, you know, aside from doing all the legal justification and finding all of the trigger that there's no jurisdictional requirement, what I did is I went to a university and asked, can you make a rapid socioeconomic profile of the aquaculture industry in Taal Lake? And you know what? I used that. I used that in telling to the court that we cannot remove the fish cages. And you know what the court did? The court recognized the need and the right of the people for a decent living and the obligation, of course, to protect the environment. And the court issued what? An order for all of the stakeholders to negotiate. A memorandum of order was presented to the court, and it was approved, and the court issued a consent decree with a writ of continuing mandamus. For those who are non-lawyers, a writ of continuing mandamus is just an order that the court will oversee the protected area, that all of those stipulations in the agreement will be implemented. Actually, while we are talking right now, yesterday we filed a compliance report because the decision was made in 2012. At any rate, it is a continuing mandamus until now. So what is the result of the implementation of that judicial order? Sustainable aquaculture in Taal Lake. You know, as councils, sometimes you are asked, what is the law? And we always say, these are the laws. And the second question of the community is, what does it mean? So we interpret it in the language that they understood. But the most difficult question is, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to comply? So of course, we try to provide a code of conduct for sustainable aquaculture practice. And it was not an easy task to do it for community. Maybe for corporate it is, but for community it is not. And some of the salient features that we have adopted in this code of conduct is, of course, requesting the regulatory agency to redistribute the fish cages so it will not be concentrated in one area. And we also look for best practices and we adopt them. Like, for example, what is the fish rate ratio, the stocking density, and then all of those technicalities in ensuring that we will be having sustainable aquaculture practice. And of course, we don't own the lake. There are other parties there, so we have to be a prime mover on community stewardship. What does it mean? We also do some sort of corporate social responsibility by doing medical and dental mission, a regular lake cleanup, providing scholarship funds for the communities, and so on. So actually, we would say that in 2015, the NGO has been awarded by our government as one of the best NGO insofar as sustainable fisheries is concerned. So we are very successful in that. But at any rate, the threat is still there. The court has continuing overseeing jurisdiction. And there are oppositors, believe me. Tourism sectors are still seeing, because if you have been in the Philippines and you are in Tagaytay, where you can see the beautiful volcano, you might say, what are those little things there? They are my clients, please don't ask them to be removed. So it's like, you know, tourism sectors where my people are not earning from the tourism industry is saying, remove them. And then, of course, there are big players, there are big green, and politicians are even, you know, selling some of the business permits for non-local, and these non-locals are not doing sustainable aquaculture. So these are some of those who are opposing a sustainability practices. And the challenge basically is what? How are we going to reduce the opposition? Of course, by creating more allies. One of the projects that I actually asked my community to do is tell them aquaculture is more fun in the Philippines. So we did a pilot testing of aquaculture tourism in 2014, just to start the conversation from the fish cage industry to the tourism industry, saying, you know, we can be an added value in your business. So basically, that is moving forward. But then again, we are still in the process of finding all the possible plaintiffs, if I may say, or oppositors in our sustainability practices. So at any rate, actually, when I look at sustainable development goals, I would say initially, all of them are actually, insofar as sustainable aquaculture is concerned, in the case of Taal Lake. Why? I thought that energy is not among them. But then I realized we have a project on compost pit. Why? Because daily mortality is a fact in all aquaculture business. And so we develop a compost pit that, you know, this daily mortality, we put it there and develop biogas. So sustainable aquaculture practice is even addressing clean energy. So it encompasses everything. But at any rate, for purpose of this case, you know, these are the sustainable goals that we have accomplished. But I want to focus on the case of the key takeaway. I want to put the last minutes that I have on the key takeaway. What is really the role of the rule of law in promoting co-management of natural resources towards and through SDG 17? Why? Because you see, there is an order here, and that order triggers us, the industry player, to do sustainable consumption and production to sustainable aquaculture. So it's like the judicial order is basically leading towards the accomplishment of SDG, in this case, SDG 17. But SDG 17 alone, while we're doing sustainable practices, there are so many players that we have to deal with. So this is not just about our supply chain, our value chain. There are so many supply chains, there are so many value chains in this particular ecosystem, and we are required to do co-management. So basically, that is when I realized that as a lawyer, it should be 17, more on partnership, creating allies. So basically, if you will look, why did I put, what do you call this, a frame within this particular structure? Because we are still under the continuing writ of mandamus. So basically, it's the court telling us, hey, talk, discuss your issues. Why? Before bringing it to us. So at any rate, what is my challenge to all of us? Let's all be a star. If you are in environmental practice, you are most probably familiar with Tony Oposa. Tony Oposa is one of the gurus in environmental law in my country. Actually, when I met him in 2014, I said, I want to be the next Oposa. Oposa was the one who was responsible in a judicial order saying that the right to a healthful ecology is intergenerational. He brought a case in the Supreme Court representing the future generation as the possible, you know, plaintiff in a case. And the court said yes. And what does a star mean? Star is we have to make a statement, but look at lawyers. When we make a statement, use our skills as if we're going to bring a case in court, not just, you know, a motherhood statement. And then, of course, we have to talk about it, bring that statement in discussion, like forum like this. And at the end of the day, if something cannot be resolved, let's bring an action in the court, because he said it may take 7 years, as mentioned by our keynote speaker, but still it will be resolved in court. So I told myself, I want to become a star. And you know, I've been doing that. But I haven't even filed a case. Why? Because at the end of the day, most probably the judicial order is correct. When you make a statement using your legal skills as if you are going to file a case, and then we start a conversation, you will resolve it at the time of T. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jelly, for that energetic presentation. Seems like it's a juggling act between law and livelihood here, right? Okay, so we'll move on to Mr. Atit. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm not really a morning person, so let's see how it works. Okay. I myself, right, currently like work in like data protection, right, and privacy. But on another hand, right, I also like working for private sector as well, right, using like artificial intelligence, right, to support like how brands can listen to like consumer voices, right, to improve their products, things like that. So I'm in the position that on a daily basis, right, it feels like, okay, actually, like, there's actually a power, like, of this artificial intelligence, right, in, like, doing a lot of stuff, right, and sometimes I just feel like, yeah, a bit scary as well, right. So let's see, right, what's the thing that I like to talk about here. Just give an example first, right, on how things currently goes, right. I mean, this kind of like automated decision making, right? The main topic that I'm going to talk about, right? It's not only in the science fiction now, right? It's already implemented, right? Here, this is one of the examples here in Thailand, right? We use a CCTV, right? I think in the morning, like somebody talking about CCTV, right? The camera, right, capture the license plate, right, of the vehicle, and look if the vehicles actually do something wrong, right, illegally or not, right? But in this case, right, the cameras actually capture the license plate of the car that's on the truck. So actually the truck do the wrongdoing, right? But the punishment actually goes to the owner of the car on the truck, right? So it's kind of like a mistake, right? So another case, right, in China. This one is like, so that's one city in China, right, that like use the like system of naming and shaming, right, for those jaywalkers. So with the facial recognition, right, the system will like capture the face and try to match this face with the database of like citizens, right? So the names will shown, right, on the street side that like, okay, Mr. this and that, Mrs. this and that, like do the jaywalking, right? This case is like there's one female presenter, right, on the ads, like at the side of a bus, like run past by the camera, and the camera capture the face, right, of this presenter. So her name appear on the screen as a jaywalker, right? So like some mistakes also happen here as well. This is actually quite famous. This is from New Zealand. So this guy, New Zealand citizen, right, with like Asian descendant, right, like from Asian family, tried to renew his passport, right? So he uploaded his photo to the system, right, and it got rejected on the ground that like the machine said that like, well, you should open your eyes, basically, in the photo. Well, I'm a third generation Chinese in Thailand as well. I feel so related to this case, particularly, right? We just have small eyes as well. So as you can see, right, decisions, right, are made more and more by machines, right? And just like humans, right, we make mistakes, right? And sometimes, right, also as well, machine make mistakes, right? But I think like one of the difference here is that like when the machine make decisions, right, it make it very fast, right, in a huge number, right? And we're going to talk about that just like on the next slide, like how it looks like, right? But here's the thing, right? Some mistakes, right, can lead to discrimination against some protected classes, right? And in a lot of countries, right, that's actually really very problematic, right? When you're going to discriminate someone to get access to some resources, some public services, and so on, right? So I think this is the main thing, like I like to discuss about how to actually like tackle this, or if there's no solution yet, right? How to actually like put more focus on this when we moving towards, right, the adoption of more and more AI, right, and like big data or technology or whatever, right? Should we have this in mind? How to think about this, right? Or in which frame, right? I don't know yet, right? But I invite everybody, right, to think more about this. Why? Right? Of course, there's the human rights aspect as well, right? But from the business side, I think like if business likes to go forward, right, to use this technology, there should be as how to say, like welcoming, let's say, welcoming sentiment from the public as well. If the public doesn't really like put a trust, right, on the new products, on this new technology, the adoption will be very difficult, right? So I think like business and human rights community, right, actually have to like work hand in hand together as well in this issue, apart from regulators, apart from government and other sectors in the society, right? So basically, this is the problem that they would like to talk about. Right, and already like mentioned some of the stakeholders, right, previously, like, but it's also includes other stakeholders as well, like civil society as well, right? And the main stakeholder here is actually the citizen, right? We are the owner of our own personal data, right? That's going to be used, right, to decide about our own life. Somebody going to decide about our life based on our data, right? So that's actually like main stakeholder. An obstacle here, right? Challenges here is, right? It's like it's kind of like a very complicated. Let's see like how we can discuss this, right? There are like different aspects, right? The thing that I just like put the stress on is like discrimination, right? But there's a problem of transparency as well, public participation as well, because the issue is very complex, right? How to deal with it, how the public can participate, right, and discuss about this, right? Also in the parliament, also outside the parliament, right? In like web forum, on the panel like this, or informally, or here and there, right? By the people who are going to get affected by this technology. Just to give you an idea of like the scale, right, or how it's going to look like. That would be like at least, right, two things that I can thinking of, right? If you can, we're going to apply, right, this decision making, like automated decision making, right? One thing is like we're talking about, okay, we make mistakes, right? But it should be okay if we have a system, if we have a mechanism, right, to review the decision, right, and revert, right, the decision that's being made, right, make things that went wrong, and make it correct again, something like that, right? So if so in the current situation, right, if you see the top row, right, we can say like, okay, we have the human decision maker, right, and we have a human. It can be like reviewer, it can be auditor, and it can be like privacy commission, whatever, right? So the capacity, right, of to do the decision making by human, we can say like let's say like just hypothetical number, right? 6 decision made, right, per day, right? And we say like maybe like 1/3 of this decision has to be got some review, right? Make a complaint, something like that, right? To this like commission, to this like regulators, right? And we say like the current capacity of the human auditor, human reviewer, it's like 2 cases like per day, right? So that's kind of match, right? If like 1/3 of like 6, which is like 2, right, complaints has been made, right, and the reviewer has comparable, right, capacity to review it, should be okay, right? But once we going more and more with the decision making by machine, it can do things very fast. So it's basically outnumber, right? I mean the human reviewer just basically got outnumbered, outpaced by machine, right? So the access to remedies is questionable now at the moment, right? In this configuration. Also, there's a problem of like, if you're going to review it, like, okay, let's say you're going to have a lot of resources. We have like more human reviewers, right? Or whatever kind of like things that we're going to review. We put a lot of resource on that. But there's still a question of that, like, how are we going to review that if the decision making, it's actually like in a black box, as a lot of AI, technology at the moment, like currently is, right? And also, because it's a black box, right? It's also going back to the problem of public participation again, right? So basically, we have no clue what's going on inside. So it's going to be very difficult to audit, to review, right? So that's another thing, right? So when we talk about decision making, it's not only about at the individual level, right? It can be at the policy level as well. This is why I addressed it. I just going to like give some example, right? Say education, right? Decision making can be about the whether you can get a scholarship or not, right? This is at the individual level, right? But also, like, if we get a lot of data, right, we can go to do a policy making based on the data, right, that we collected. We can talking also like which province is going to get a new school, right? But if the data is a little bit like kind of biased, right, the decision we're going to make, right, will be biased as well. So this discrimination can go to individual levels, right? But it can also go to like in a larger level as well at the policy making. So I think like in the end, like it's maybe, right, it can be connected to other issue as well. If we're talking about the allocations of resources, it's going to be designed, right, or assist somehow biasly by machine. So how to address that, like, and when it comes to the problem of resource allocation, this is why I think like it can connect it like to all other issue as well. Not only education, not only like access to healthcare or employment, right? It can be connected to other goals, right, in SDG as well. As the UN global pulse actually like shown here that like the big data actually can be connected to a lot of SDGs, right, goals. So comes the recommendations, right? I think like from the discussion in our group, it's actually things are very new here, right? It's like uncharted area, and but so to actually like go, right, or jump for a conclusion, right, for a particular kind of regulation, maybe it's too fast, I don't know, right? But at least the first thing that we should start is like maybe at least come up with some principles, right? That okay, take all the concerns from every stakeholders and actually like try to come up with some scenarios, right? Or what kind of consequences that can be happen, right? And with these principles, right, we also like move a step further to explore, does there any like possible regulatory options, right, that can going to fix this issue, right? There's already some guiding principle there, right? We're not starting like actually like from scratch, right? UN already work on this, right? There are some other groups like Privacy International together with Red Cross International, right? Try to tackle this in the development area, right? Humanitarian businesses as well, right? I talked a little about the adoption, right? In Singapore, right? They try to come up with this as well to move forward their fintech industry, right? So just invitation, right, to think more about this. Thanks.
Thank you for that. It seems like science fiction has become more science fact, right? So close to us now. So I would like to invite Kun Torpat to present.
Good morning. So thank you. I would like to start with this. According to one of our late former Prime Minister, Krit Pramod, he said that if Thailand didn't have corruption for 2 years, we could pave roads with gold. The entire country. I would say this is an understatement, because with $3 trillion baht a year, we could decorate some of the roads with diamonds as well. So, so what happened? Let me show you very briefly of these two contrasting to a certain extent, indicators developed by the same organization, which is the Transparency International. The first one is the Global Corruption Barometer, which put Thailand at the top of the list of the country that has so many regulations, and people are very highly satisfied with the current situation, with what the state is doing at the moment. So as you can see, in over the past 10 years, there's been 15 new laws and regulations regarding concerning the issue of corruption, and 6 new entities with direct responsibility to fight corruption only in the past 10 years. In another indicators, which is more widely perceived, which is the Corruption Perception Index. So which put Thailand at also the top of the list of those countries with very high corruption levels. So the question is, has there been a participable change in the situation? We have so many regulations and laws while this situation is occurring in the country. So our research group has conducted 14 research papers in the last year, and we concluded a few explanations to this situation. For example, the first one is that because the corruption has a very wide spectrum and very wide, many definitions, from malnutritious school lunch, petty corruption, to make a project in a construction project. However, we entrusted only a few institutions, state institutions, who are influenced by lawyers and academic and experts like us to fight the issue, to tackle this very large spectrum of the problem. For example, the state tend to focus very highly on the procurement problem, while corruption occurs in every other aspects as well. So with only a few institutions, how can we fight this very broad problem? Let me show you another picture of various organizations, civil society, states, and private entities who are fighting corruption at the moment in the country. There's 20 to 30 organizations at the moment in Thailand, but they're not cooperating very well in a systematic way in compared to corrupt politicians and bureaucrats who are collaborating very well in their collusion ring, for example. So how can we move this forward? And finally, is the fact that Thai people are actually aware of this problem and aware of the situation and how harmful corruption can be, and they would like to fight corruption as well, but they do not have tools. So what can we do if we really hate corruption and they want to just start doing something today? I don't know what to do. So we need to create a tool for them. So what I'm proposing, I would like to keep, well, this is not my slides. Anyway, I would like to keep at this page because, but focusing on the 16th goal, because I believe that once we have a very strong institution and social justice, we will be able to enhance projects in all other goals as well. So what I'm proposing, what can we do about this? We need to listen to people. So there's a case, a very interesting case in Afghanistan that this guy had problem with one of the government agencies. He would like to make complaints. He witnessed corruption. He would like to make complaint. He went to a different organization and he was rejected and sent back. So what he did, he bought, because Afghan people do like playing kites, so he bought 1,000 kites. He wrote 1,000 comments, put them in these kites, and he flew these 1,000 kites all around the city. Fortunately, one of the kites fell into the presidential palace. The president saw it and then made change. But if this happens in Thailand, I'm not sure whether he will be imprisoned. So I'm not suggesting that we buy more kites for the people, but this is a very simple way that the state can listen to the people. So how can we apply something like this to reality? This shows that there's actually applications and methods like this with technological support in many other countries around the world, and it actually shows significant effect on the situation in their countries. So we are not the first one. This is not the newest technology, but there's been evidence all around the world. And Thailand has, to a certain extent, tried this experiment the last year with the CAC project of Dr. Bandit under the IOD, who came to give a speech a few days ago. This project is called Citizen Feedback Project. So basically, we installed QR code in 5 different government agencies and allowed people to rate government agencies. So after the project was implemented, we could increase the number of complaints and feedback sent to these government agencies from 15 comments a year in a paper-based comment paper to 2,800 comments in a month. But however, can we say that all these 2,800 comments are true? No. So we need to bring in those that I showed earlier, 30 to 50 organizations on board. So with the social network theory statistical model that I and my research team has constructed, we could develop a model for these organizations to work together systematically. And as I said, these comments may not be all true. We need evidential support, so we need to utilize the open data that the government is trying, that we are convincing the government to open the data and verify these information. So how does it work? Let me give you a very small but compelling examples of in real true story. So this is a picture of a canal in one rural area in Thailand. So this canal was meant to be dredged, and there was a budget for this canal to be dredged, but it wasn't. So one of the concerned citizens sent information to one of our pilot projects called Must Share or Tong Share. It's just a Facebook platform page. And then this platform then verified this information with the government procurement budget, and it shows that actually there's a budget to dredge this canal, but it hasn't been dredged. So the information was sent to a group of our partners that I showed earlier. For example, Isra News Agency, which is an investigative journalism, to watchdog groups to have them gather more information and send back to the anti-corruption organization Thailand. And then once these information is verified and then published, the other day, just one day after the information was published, this happened. So the canal was stretched in one day. So how do we close this loop? Because if we go through normal judiciary process, it would take a year at least for something to happen. So how do we close this loop? Utilizing the people of the empowering people and bring in other organizations who are working in this particular issue already. So I propose to create a platform that allows us to have an anti-corruption ecosystem, as I put it in the title of this talk. So I would like to end this session very briefly with this picture that if we can utilize the technology to understand the people, to understand how people perceive corruption in their own context, which is very wide spectrum, as I mentioned, and bring in empowering organizations, whether they are state organizations, civil society, or private entities, to help the people, empowering them, understand them. I believe that we can create real change with this ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kun Tawpat. It seems like citizen participation can really shape how government work, right? And I think that in Thailand, we want to emulate that Pakistan, is it Pakistan? No, Afghanistan case. We just have to put them on the stray dogs and stray cats. You know, they'll be everywhere. Okay, so we've come to the Q&A session. We actually have some questions that we prepared for you guys, but we also have the opportunity for the audience to actually ask as well. So to make it a democracy process, do you want me to ask or do you want the floor to ask? Yeah, thank you. You always come up with a third, fourth option. Thank you very much. I mean, we can start while the audience think of the difficult questions. I can start from you first, Catalina. I think we've discussed this a lot, and the closing remark on your presentation was about youth culture, and how the youth can play an important role in actually help with drug situations. So I think we can start with how can the law help in empowering youth in this situation, the law?
Wow.
Well, I mean, if it's not the law, then what would you suggest?
Yeah, because I think, okay, let me think. That was not the question we took. No, I think it's again as to change how we approach as well, like drug policy, how we approach youth, you know. So first, I think in general, youth is a really unprotected population in the way that we have minors, that for sure, since they are minor, they are protected by law in many cases. We also have women that we also, for being a minority and all the things that happen, we're also protected. But in general, I have seen that in many scenarios, youth is not protected at all, and usually is treated the same, somebody that has 18 years that somebody that has 40 years, in a way, in the programs. For example, I used to work in the program that reintegrate the ex-combatants of the armed groups, and people from 18 until whatever, they were in the same group as adults. And I think it's really different to be a young people than to be an adult. So that's the first one, that we, even if by law they are not protected, we start to think about youth as an unprotected population and a vulnerable population. Also, I think that even if it sounds like really typical, I think usually youth is assumed that they are the problem, no? So we need to work with them because they are causing a lot of problem to us, the institutions or the government. And I think that is really important to change that assumption in the way that youth can be really, they are agents, they have a lot of knowledge, they know about their problems or their context, and we need to involve them more actively, but not because they're causing problem to us, but because we need them to be agents of change in a way. So I think it's very different if we phrase a program because we need to reduce violence and we need these young people to stop killing each other. It's really different if we actually think about programs more thinking we need these youth to be agents of change because they're really young, you know? So I think that's a big difference. And in general is that I think that we need to understand like everything that happens, you know, when you are young, you are starting to feel that you are not an adult, you are not a teenager anymore, and there's a lot of changes, and we need to understand why they make decisions, because for sure they have a lot of agency, but also what's going on in their world in a way. So I think that's why we need to talk to them a lot. We don't need to assume a lot, and I think in drug policy, usually we kept them really like far away from our decisions, and as happened a lot in development issues, we assume a lot of what they need, and sometimes it's not what actually they need or what they want. And yeah, to assume them like agents, no? That people that also have like decisions, knowledge, and I think like if we involve them more in our drug policy, I think it's more like bringing more like a human lens to policy, more or less.
Great. So we'll move on to Halim. It's like it seems like at the moment there's no system in place to actually support victims. how do you think that the rule and the role of law can actually change that?
It must change. We have simply come to the point where we cannot let the status quo continue. So what I hope to do when you actually go and speak to the stakeholders, and the stakeholders here would be, for example, the Attorney General's chambers, because the deputy public prosecutors come from there. The other stakeholders would be, of course, the judiciary itself. And just to speak to the stakeholders, to actually tell them that, look, if we value the rule of law, if we truly understand what the rule of law means, then we cannot simply let the victims be bereft without any support systems in place. And I think there is no counter argument to this. I mean, there's obviously opposition to this because, you know, whenever you're trying to enact change, there's always opposition. But I do not think there can be a cogent counter argument to this. Thank you.
It seems like there's some questions from the floor. Who would like to start?
Yeah, I have a question for Dr. Toplas about I think you mentioned something about the spectrum of the corruption, right? So do you have like in mind what area that you want to focus to utilize this ecosystem? Because I think there's and for the different type of corruptions, I think the mechanism to kind of resolve it might be different. It depends on the scope and the stakeholders involved in that.
This is the question that researchers really love to do. So we love to define corruption, the definition of corruption, but on the other side, I would like to answer this on the opposite side, that I don't think that experts should dominate the arena of determining what corruption really is. It should be coming from the people who really understand what corruption in their own context. For example, let me give you a very quick example of if I am an expert, I'm very well connected with all the authorities, and I can prevent corruption in one of the mega projects, and I saved billions of baht. But it doesn't affect the people who walk along the street in the rural area. And so because their concern might be just the malnutritious school lunch. And these problems need to be addressed. So I would say that experts and scholars should not dominate the area of defining what corruption really is, but listen to the people. But in the past, it has been very difficult to do thousands of research to understand the wide spectrum of corruption. But with the current technology, I think that we can listen to every and understand and listen to every people. So hope that answers your question.
How would you suggest a system of citizen participation in this sense?
Well, as I mentioned, we can start with a platform that allows people to give feedbacks and give complaints and send evidence, send pictures to this platform, while this can be verified with information from the open data, and then can also be verified by different groups of organizations that working on this particular issue. For example, the investigative journalist.
Okay, but and are you talking about it like a formal system or an informal system?
Well, it can be informal system that people can send information first, and we can understand each how. For example, people in Nan might not be interested in mega project in airport construction, but they are more interested in the bribery that allows illegal logging in that area.
Okay, thank you for that. Any more questions?
My name is Gop from Thailand. I asked a question to anybody can answer me. The case from the three ladies is very interesting about you work with the real people to understand, deep understand with the people who are victim or who are maybe have a problem, but directly relation. But the three-man guy worked with the information technology, and I think that, I don't know, you think or like me too, there are some gap between the information technology with the real situation. I give some example. The new startup who want to make information for the farmer. They show that the application show that who grow a crop like a corn or cassava and rubber in the illegal or legal area. This information will launch to around the world. Customer know that buy the product is illegal for area or not illegal area. But people don't know why people who grow the corn grow the corn in the illegal area. People don't know, but justify it very quickly. Oh, we don't accept, we don't want to buy corn from the illegal area. But people don't know that big companies support the people to grow corn in the highland. And the government push them to make a commercial crop. But I think that it's like a gap between the flow information and the real situation. Anybody to answer me how to link the gap, how to make a relation between the deep understanding with the people and to general of digital information. Thank you.
If I may, so at least based on my case, I admit the limitation of technology. Imagine me trying to explain all of these legal requirements to my clients who are fish cage operators. If you will look at their profile, the highest educational attainment is not even elementary or primary. But you know, technology helps me. But before using technology, I did a face-to-face. I did like, I went to every village. So that is where I make it a point that I will know the people. But at any rate, you know, I can't be there 24/7. Right now, I am in Italy pursuing my PhD, but technology helps me communicate with them. So it's like, imagine them submitting compliance report quarterly while their lawyer is in Italy pursuing PhD, or I was here yesterday and the deadline of compliance report was yesterday, but they did it because technology helps me connect with them. But it shouldn't end there. You should always go back to the community because you might not see the real picture if you will just be looking at Skype. Thank you.
Really love this example. I'm like, oh yeah, right. So I think like one of the things here is that as this very excellent example illustrate is that like there's a asymmetry like of like information flows or access to like technology, information, whatever. It's like so on one hand, like consumers, like especially consumers in the developed world, right, and all like maybe regulatory bodies has the ability to monitor like those farmers or citizens in general, like basically like people, like small people, right? But then these small people, like farmers, doesn't really have an ability to monitor back, right? For example, like about the works of the like land department, right? Like or like agricultural or department that like issues maybe license, maybe like piece of land, maybe like or even like the development projects that going to support them, right? And that. So like how the farmers actually knows in the end that like whether this piece of land is going to be categorized as legal, illegal, or illegal, right? Or how the farmers can actually monitor or know in the end that like whether the crops going to be sold in which manner, right? So I think like there's a unbalanced power here again, right? So there are those people who already in power, right, with a lot of investment, who can get access to like newer technology, right, with more power to monitor. Like on another hand, right, there's a people who cannot really get access to technology and lack the ability to monitor back. Right. So I think like, I mean, I feel this is a very excellent because it resonate back to the things that I'm currently do and just present about this AI as well. Like most of the time, people could get access to this decision making, right? Automated decision making system. It's the people who already in a position who do the as a decision maker already, right? They have the computer to assist their work to do things more faster, right? But then the people without power or like with lesser power in general, right? Which have to rely on public prosecutor, which have to rely on the commissions or reviewer, like to balance, right? The power. So on one hand you have the state, right? On another hand you have like people, right? And in general, the negotiation power of these two parties is not that very even, right? So we have the idea of public prosecutor, we have the idea of like different human rights commissioners, right? To help protect this, to balance the power, right? So, but like this decision making, right? Automated decision making, this monitoring system, right? Give more power to this side, but who's going to give more power to this side to make it even again? I think that's the question that like. We have to answer if we can really answer this question, right? If we can really give the power to this side, why we dare to give the power to this side? Thanks.
So can you anticipate like the negative side of what you just said? I mean, it sounds quite positive.
It's not really that negative, but the idea of this is like how to make every parties in the society when they negotiate something. We talk about politics, right? We're talking policy here, right? Everybody should have the same power in the negotiation. I mean, ideally, right? When they negotiate something, right, with the same kind of power, with the same kind of information amount at least.
And just asking, like, we have a couple of lawyers here. How do you think that the rule and the role of law can assist in this power balance?
Again, if you would know, I'm an advocate of bringing issues to court. So I think, it doesn't necessarily mean that you always bring an action to court. We have to clarify it. Because I was asked by one of the scholars saying, okay, if you're encouraging bringing action to court to balance all issues, what if you will not get the resolution that you are looking for, which is a high risk, right? So actually the question in that particular case in bringing action to court is, why do you think that the resolutions were not in your favor? Why? Because most lawyers, at least, they try to bring an action without actually making a statement and talking to other people. So basically, I made actually a study in 2014. I tried to evaluate the implementation of our filing case. I mean, what is the status of all of the environmental cases in the Philippines in the last 10 years? And you know what? 67% of the cases that were filed were dismissed on technicality. Why? Because I checked. Lawyers weren't studying. They were so passionate, like, I want to bring action. But they're not using their skills in making a statement and talking to people. Because, I've realized, yes, I'm an advocate of a judicial decision, bringing it to court as the last recourse. You have to use all your skills, legal competencies in making your statement and bring it in a conversation, because at the end of the day, that balancing power may be resolved just by a simple dialogue or a forum.
So the good news is we have 10 more minutes for the Q&A session. So any questions from the floor? Any questions? Yes? No? Okay, so we'll continue. So, Mr. Atit, because you're next, you're next in line. So we were talking about accountability, right? From your presentation, and you were talking about, like, is AI accountable? Now, that is the what. Now, if we move that a little bit further, who is accountable? Because you can't just, I'm guessing that you can't just say that the AI is accountable, because someone as in humans, need to kind of interact with this AI. So is there, but the question is there a who in it?
Well, if one day, right, in the future, this AI has agency in itself, maybe, I don't know. But I mean, at this moment, I think it's more like if, say, it's a corporation or it's a government agencies, right, or whatever kind of organization. If the organization, right, deploy this kind of technology, right, use this kind of technology to provide some services, I don't think it actually matters in terms of like, when you think about who's going to accountable for this, right? I mean, it's going to be the organization anyway, right? So I mean, from the view of the consumer or citizen, right, the one who get the service, they don't know. I mean, sometimes maybe they don't know like who's actually make the decision or like process this information, right? They just like submit some application, and then the decision has been made, send letter back to them, right? So it can be human, it can be AI, but in the end, it work on behalf of the organization, right? So I think in the end, the organization should like take should be accountable on this. But then again, I think like the questions that a lot of people may ask is like, but why a person, a legal person, or like a legal entity, right, or organization should take responsible for the thing that they didn't make a decision? So they may argue that like, well, AI is actually the one who actually made the decision, right? Not the organization. So why organization should be responsible for that? Sometimes it, well, so the argument is like, it may, I don't know, it will or not, but like it may legitimate in the case if you're going to trace back to like the intent, right? So whether the organization actually have the intent on this, and there's a case that like it's actually quite maybe difficult to prove that the organization actually have the intent to discriminate someone, right? For example, like there's a concept like proxy discrimination, right? That even though the organization try its best, right, to not include sensitive information, right, about like gender, political ideology, whether they are part of labor union or not, religious, right, or race, like skin color, like to be included in the model. But there's still a possibility of like there are some variables, some data, right, that can be used and refer back, right, and in the end discriminate based on like those, and the same effect with using the sensitive information. I just give you an example, like just to, for example, like if the AI model, right, it's going to use the fact that I'm from the like a Chinese, right, background, right, like ethnic, right, like which is like the ethnicity is actually sensitive information, like you shouldn't be included, right? But actually, but what if the model can include things like address or city or maybe like district, right? And to be included in the model and decide on something. And that district, say like maybe like Yawarat or Chinatown, like in Bangkok, right? Which like there's a lot of like Chinese population there, right? So ethnicity cannot be included, but address or city can be included, right? And sometimes the city or the district can tell something about your ethnicity, right? And maybe the model is actually like their decision is based on, sometimes I don't know, like it's kind of black box, right? But it could possible, right, that it use the district to decide on something. How to deal with this, right? And because this thing happened, how you can going back to the question of accountability, right? It can maybe argue that like the organization already tried its best, right, to exclude all the sensitive information, but the issue of proxy discrimination is still there. Without the intention of the organization, should the organization be accountable for, please?
Can I just give a real life example of what's going on now without actually naming any private companies? But I think everyone is aware that in the US, they are trying to actually test out, because they've already created it, but they're trying to test out driverless cars. I think everyone has heard about this. And I think everyone has also heard that a driverless car unfortunately killed a pedestrian. So that is something that is very current, and I think it fits with your example as to who is actually responsible for this. The narrative that's coming out around this incident is like, it's actually blaming the driverless car. It's like the driverless car is to blame because people see that the car hit the pedestrian, but the driverless car is actually something that was created by people. Of course, as my learned friend says, well, those people that created it didn't have the intention of hitting the pedestrian. But then, you know, there are other things such as negligence and duty of care, etc., etc. So I just thought to give this example because this is actually very interesting to see how it concludes. And that will actually give us an insight of, you know, how the law is going to develop here.
But I would like to clarify, because, you know, sometimes it's not about asking who should be accountable, because I don't like that question in my experience. Why? Because sometimes if we ask question who should be accountable, we try to look on either witch hunting, who is the person, and then we realize that we are so trapped on finding these people who should be accountable when we in fact fail to analyze the problem. Let me give you one specific case. This is a case of an engineer who was helping SMEs, small medium enterprises, for the project of the Department of Science and Technology in my country on setup. Setup is small enterprise technology upgrading. It's like a program of the government giving SMEs funds, and engineers will help, you know, innovate some of the equipment to make the operation efficient. Unfortunately, this young engineer from the government, you know, he was a project manager. And in this particular setup project, give funds, but it is not a grant. So the SMEs have to repay the government without interest in a period of 5 years. And these SMEs failed to return the money. And this young engineer approached me and saying he had so many audit observations from the Commission and Audit alleging him of corruption, but he didn't, you know, put the money in his pocket. It was there. It just so happened that the SMEs failed to, you know, get enough money, sell the products, and pay the government. So it's like, I told him, you know, I did project plan analysis on that particular issue, and then I realized that there is a gap. The gap is that you have an engineer project manager, and the key performance indicators that you ask from an engineer is also return of the investment or the cash flow. And he said, I don't know anything about it. The technology there is working, but, you know, so suddenly I told the Department of Science and Technology, my recommendation is change the project management team. Make it like 2 teams, technical working group, bring the engineers there, and you should have a finance team that will support the SMEs to generate income based on the technological innovation. Otherwise, if you ask the question, who is accountable for the missing money? The project manager who is an engineer who doesn't understand cash flow.
Yeah, that is why, like, if I can recall, one of my questions was, or should there be a who? That's it. No, I'm not saying that there's always be a who, but
there is a who, but you should stop there. You should like analyze the entire problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, like to support the idea of like the duty of care, like should take into consideration as well, because like as a citizen, as a consumer, we actually have a reasonable expectation, right? That like we should be like in care of something.
Yep, that's very important as well. So I think that's about time that we've got now. I'd like to thank you, everyone, for being here. And thank you, all of us, Catalina, Halim, Shirley, Kunatit, and Dr. Taupat, for spending time here. And actually, I would really like to thank TIJ and the Institute of Global Law and Policy at Harvard University for our opportunities for all of us to actually meet and discuss and learn, and most importantly, share friendship and the party, important. And it seems like, to conclude this, it seems like law in this next 21st century seems to be must be able to make a connection between social, economic, technology, politics, to actually make the society a fair and just society. Thank you very much.